This channel exists for one reason: not to entertain you, not to frighten you, but to show you something real, something that happened to a real person, so that if you ever find yourself in a similar moment, you will recognize it before it is too late. What you are about to hear is not a story about a bad person who made a bad decision. It is a story about a good person who loved someone deeply, and how that love was used quietly, gradually, completely, until there was nothing left to use. Her name was Margaret, and she spent 31 years building something, so that she would be okay, so that she would be free, so that, at the end of her working life, she would not have to ask anyone for anything. She never thought she would be the one asking. The first thing she noticed was the silence. Not the silence of the house, she had grown used to that. The silence of her phone. 3 days without a message. 4 days. Then 5. She kept checking, the way you do when you are waiting for something and you cannot explain why the waiting feels so heavy. She did not know, in that moment, what the silence meant. She thought it meant he was busy. She thought it meant he was fine and simply had not called. She told herself that was normal, that grown children do that she should not read too much into it. But her hands kept going back to the phone, and somewhere, in a place she did not look at too carefully, she already knew that the last wire transfer, 22,000, sent 8 days ago, had not solved anything at all. Margaret was 63 years old. She had worked as a dental hygienist for 31 years, the last 22 of them at the same practice in Fresno, California. She was good at her job. She was careful with her patients. She was careful with her money. Every month, without exception, she had deposited a portion of her paycheck into a retirement account. Not a large portion. She had never earned a large salary, but a consistent one. 200 in the beginning, then 350. Then, in her later years when the house was paid off and her expenses settled, 600 a month, sometimes more. Over 31 years, that discipline had built something real. A 401k with 214,000 in it, a savings account with 31,000, a small pension that would start paying when she turned 65. She had planned all of it carefully. She had met with a financial advisor twice. She had a notebook, a plain blue spiral notebook, where she had written down her retirement goals in her own handwriting. When she wanted to stop working, what her monthly budget would look like, how long the money would last if she was careful. She had done everything right. She had done it alone. Her husband, Robert, had passed 11 years earlier. A heart attack, sudden, at 54. They had no other children, just the one son, Daniel. Daniel was 38. He lived in Phoenix, a 5-hour drive away. He called on her birthday and sometimes on Sundays. They were not close in the way she wished they were, but they were not distant either. There was love between them. She was certain of that. She had always been certain of that. Her routine was quiet. Coffee at 6:30, work by 8, home by 5, dinner alone most nights, sometimes the news, sometimes a book. She had 2 friends from work, Linda and Carol, who she saw on Fridays. She was not unhappy. She was simply settled, in the way that life settles when the urgent parts are over. And what remains is slow and steady and reliable. She liked that. She had earned it. Daniel called on a Tuesday in October. Not a Sunday. Not her birthday. A Tuesday at 7 p.m., and when she picked up, she could hear something in his voice before he said a single word. A tightness, a held breath. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." He had lost his job. The company had downsized. He had 30 days of savings and a lease he could not break. He was not asking for anything, he said. He just wanted her to know. She listened. She asked the right questions. She told him it would be okay. She said she was proud of him for calling. She did not offer money. She did not think of money at all that first night. She thought of her son's voice and the distance between them, and how long it had been since he had called her on a Tuesday. After that, he called more often, 3 times a week, then almost every day. They talked about everything: her work, his job search, old memories, his father. He was funny when he relaxed. She had forgotten that about him. He made her laugh in a way she had not laughed in years. "I think about you more than I should," she told her friend Linda. She meant it as a confession, as something she was slightly embarrassed by. The way mothers are sometimes embarrassed by how much they love their children. Linda smiled and said that was what being a mother was. Margaret thought that sounded right. 2 months passed. Daniel found part-time work, a delivery job. Not enough to cover everything, but something. He sounded lighter. He called it a stepping stone. He talked about a business idea, something in logistics. He explained it in pieces, and she listened. Not because she fully understood it, but because he was talking to her the way he used to, when he was young and the world felt possible. She started rearranging her week around his calls. She would come home, make dinner, and wait. If he called late, she stayed up. If he did not call, she felt the absence in a way she had not felt anything in a long time. And now, looking back, she knows exactly when it started. It was not the first request. It was not even the second. It was a moment 3 weeks into those phone calls, when he mentioned, casually, not even as a request, just as a fact, that his car registration had lapsed and he couldn't afford to renew it, and that meant he couldn't take the delivery job shifts next week. He did not ask. He simply said it. And she said, "How much is it?" That was a moment. Not dramatic, not suspicious, just a mother asking a question the way mothers do. The registration was $187. She transferred it that evening via Venmo. He thanked her. She felt good. She felt useful. She felt like a mother. She did not write it in the blue notebook. The next request came 6 weeks later. A medical bill, $340. That had gone to collections and was now affecting his credit score. He had an interview coming up with a company that did background checks. He needed it cleared. He explained it carefully, the way you explain something you have thought about a lot. And she heard the shame in his voice, and that shame made her move quickly, the way you move when you want to end someone's discomfort. $340. She transferred it that same afternoon. He said, "I'll pay you back as soon as things stabilize." She said, "Don't worry about it." She meant it. She was not keeping a tally. She was not thinking about repayment. She was thinking about the interview. She was thinking about her son. In January, the calls took on a different quality. He started talking about the business idea with more detail. He had found a partner, a friend from college, someone with experience in supply chain. They had a potential client. They needed seed capital to register the LLC and build a simple website and cover the first 3 months of operating costs. He was not asking her. He was sharing, but the sharing felt like a door left open, and she found herself walking toward it without quite deciding to. What kind of capital? She asked. About 8,000 total. But I'm not asking you, Mom. I'm looking at other options. She thought about it for 2 days. She thought about Robert, who had always wanted to start something and never did. She thought about Daniel's voice when he talked about this, the energy in it, the life. She thought about the 31,000 in her savings account, and how 8,000 was not all of it, and how maybe this was exactly what savings were for. I want to see you succeed, she told him. Let me help. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Are you sure? She said yes. She was sure. 8,000. Wire transfer. February 14th. After the 8,000, the smaller requests stopped feeling like requests. They felt like maintenance. His phone bill when the business account wasn't set up yet, $94. A tool subscription for the logistics software they were using, $210 a month. Just for 2 months, he said, until the first client payment came in. Gas money for a client meeting in Tucson, $75. Things that made sense when explained. Things that were easy to say yes to when the larger yes, the 8,000, had already been given. In March, he asked for 4,500. The client had signed a letter of intent, but the contract payment was delayed 30 days. They needed to cover payroll, just him and his partner. Just 1 month to keep the operation going until the check cleared. She hesitated. Not out loud. Inside. A small pause. The kind you override quickly because overriding it is easier than examining it. She said yes. She transferred 4,500 from savings. She told herself, this is what investors do. She told herself, he is my son. She did not call Linda. She did not call Carol. She did not want to explain it to anyone, because explaining it would mean listening to herself say it out loud, and she was not sure how it would sound out loud. Here is the question she never quite asked herself: if the business was real, why did every emergency arrive before the revenue did? The client payment was coming in 30 days, then 60. Then the client had a cash flow issue of their own. Then there was a new client, bigger, but they needed to purchase a software license to work with them. Then his partner had a family emergency and was unavailable for 3 weeks. Then the original client resurfaced but needed a modified proposal, which required a consultant, which required 1,200. Each event had a logical explanation. Each explanation required a specific amount of money. Each amount was larger than the last, but not so much larger that it triggered alarm. That gap between the last amount and the new amount was always small enough to step across. Margaret was a careful woman. She had spent 31 years being careful. But careful people have a weakness. They believe in systems. They believe that if the steps are followed correctly, the result will be what was promised. And Daniel was very good at steps. He was very good at explanations. He answered every question she had. He provided details. He sent her screenshots of the letter of intent, of the software quote, of the email from the client. She did not know how to verify any of it. She had never needed to know how. April brought the largest request yet, $18,000. The business needed to post a performance bond to secure the new contract. Without the bond, the deal would go to a competitor. With the bond, the first payment, $45,000, he showed her the contract, would arrive within 60 days. The $18,000 would be returned as soon as the payment cleared. It was not a gift. It was a loan. It was 60 days. She looked at her savings account. She had $14,800 left after everything else. I don't have $18,000 in savings, she said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, what about the 401k? She did not answer right away. She had never touched the 401k. In 31 years, she had not taken a single withdrawal. That account was not money to her. It was a promise she had made to herself. It was the version of her future that she had built carefully, piece by piece, across a lifetime of 200 deposits and 350 deposits and 600 deposits. I know what that account means to you, he said. I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. She took out $18,000 from her 401k. The early withdrawal penalty and taxes reduced it to approximately $13,600 in effective value. She wired the full $18,000. She told herself 60 days. She wrote it in the blue notebook, just the amount, not the account. The 60 days passed. The payment did not arrive. The client had restructured. The bond was being held in escrow and could not be returned until the contract was formally executed. There was a legal fee to expedite the execution, $3,200. Then an accountant fee to certify the financial statements, $1,800. Then a wire processing delay that required a temporary bridge transfer of $7,000 to keep the deal from collapsing. Each time, the story was almost resolved. Each time, there was one more thing. And each time Margaret said yes, it became harder to say no, because saying no now would mean that everything she had already given was gone. And that could not be. That was not possible. That was not something she could hold. Between April and July, she withdrew a total of $62,000 from her 401k. After taxes and penalties, the real cost was closer to $81,000. She stopped writing in the blue notebook. She did not want to see the numbers. In August, she called her financial advisor. She had not told him anything. She asked, in a way she hoped sounded casual, what her current balance was. He paused. He said, "Margaret, can we schedule a call?" She knew from the pause. Her 401k, the account she had built over 31 years, had $31,400 left in it. Her savings account had $2,100. She had given her son $114,000 over 10 months. After penalties, taxes, and fees, the actual cost to her retirement was closer to $148,000. She sat at her kitchen table after that call. She did not move for a long time. The coffee went cold. The afternoon light moved across the floor and changed. She sat there until it was dark. She did not cry. She just sat there, very still. The way you sit when something large has happened and your body hasn't caught up to it yet. That night, she called Daniel. He answered on the second ring, cheerful, easy. He had news. The contract was close, this week for certain. She let him talk. She listened to all of it. And then, when he paused, she asked the question she had been carrying for months without knowing she was carrying it. Are you really who you say you are? A silence. Then a laugh, gentle, slightly confused. Mom, what kind of question is that? I just want to understand. The business, the client, the bond. I looked back at everything and I want to understand how it adds up. It adds up because it's real, he said. I know it's taken longer than I said. I know it's been hard, but this is happening. I need you to trust me. After everything I've done to get here, I need my own mother to trust me. She felt the familiar pull, the guilt, the love, the way that love and guilt, when they arrive together, are almost impossible to separate. She said, "Okay, I trust you." She transferred 22,003 days later. It was almost everything that remained. 8 days after that last wire transfer, the silence began. She called. No answer. She texted. No response. She called again the next morning, and the morning after that. She stood in her kitchen holding the phone with both hands, squeezing it as though pressure could produce a signal. Her breathing changed. It became shallow and controlled, the kind of controlled that is very close to not controlled at all. She sat down. She stood up. She went to the window. She came back to the table. She opened her banking app and stared at the numbers until the numbers stopped meaning anything. She picked up the blue notebook. She opened it to the first page, where she had written, in her own handwriting, the word retirement. She set it face down on the table. She did not move for a very long time. She tried to reach him for 11 days. On the 12th day, the number she had been calling for 10 months was disconnected. She drove to Phoenix. She had the address from a birthday card she had sent 2 years ago. The apartment complex was real. The unit number was real. But the tenant who answered the door was a young woman who had lived there for 3 years and had never heard the name Daniel. Margaret sat in her car in the parking lot of that apartment complex for an hour and a half. She does not talk about what that was like. She talks around it, about the drive home, about calling the bank, about the police report she eventually filed. She talks about the practical steps because the practical steps are easier to hold than the other thing. The other thing is this: the person she had talked to every day for 10 months, the person whose voice had made her feel connected and seen and needed, had never existed, or had existed in a form so different from what she believed that the difference was the same as not existing. She had not just lost 114,000. She had lost a version of her son. She had lost the conversations, the closeness, the future she had imagined. Daniel stabilized the business running. Sunday calls again the way they used to be. She had given money to a story, and the story was gone. The real Daniel, her actual son, called her back within 2 days of her reaching out. He was in Phoenix. He had a different number. He had not spoken to her in 8 months. Life, he said, had been complicated. He knew nothing about a business. He knew nothing about a partner. He had not asked her for a single dollar. She sat at her kitchen table and listened to his voice and did not tell him, at first, what had happened. She just listened to him. The real him. His cadence, his particular way of pausing before a sentence. The specific sound of someone who was actually her son. Then she told him. The silence on his end lasted a long time. "Mom," he said. And in that one word she heard everything, the disbelief, the grief. The thing that comes after grief when you realize something cannot be undone. She told her financial advisor the full truth. Her retirement portfolio at 63 had $31,400 in it. She would need to work at least 5 more years. The pension, when it came, would cover her basic expenses if she was very careful. There was no cushion. There was no margin. Everything she had built across 3 decades, the discipline, the deposits, the quiet, careful planning, had been reduced to almost nothing in 10 months. She filed a police report. The investigation went nowhere. Wire fraud is difficult to prosecute. The account the money was sent to had been closed. The phone numbers were prepaid. The documents he had sent, the letter of intent, the client contract, were sophisticated forgeries, the detective told her. She was not the first. She was not the first. She still has the blue notebook. She told me she opened it recently, for the first time since last summer. She read what she had written, the goals, the projected budget, the year she was going to stop working. She read it the way you read something written by a younger version of yourself. Someone who did not know what was coming. "I wasn't stupid," she said. "I want people to understand that. I was not a stupid woman. I raised a child alone after my husband died. I managed a household on a hygienist's salary for 30 years. I did everything right." She paused. He sounded exactly like my son. He knew things, I don't know how, but he knew things. The way Daniel says mom before something important. Stories about when he was little. He knew about Robert dying. He knew how Daniel used to call every Sunday. She folded her hands on the table. "I think what got me was the connection. I hadn't realized how lonely I was. And then there was this voice every day that needed me. That made me feel like I mattered. And I think I wanted it to be real so much that I helped it be real. Does that make sense?" "It makes complete sense. That is exactly how this works. Not through confusion, not through stupidity, through love, through loneliness, through the very real human need to feel necessary to someone you care about." The person or people who did this to Margaret had studied her. They had found the frequency of her son's calls, or perhaps intercepted one. They had built a persona using real details. They had moved slowly, carefully, over 10 months. They had given her enough genuine feeling that the financial requests felt like natural extensions of a real relationship. This is called a family impersonation scam. It is not rare. It is, according to the Federal Trade Commission, one of the fastest growing categories of elder financial fraud in the United States. In 2023 alone, Americans over 60 lost an estimated $3.4 billion to scams and financial exploitation, and a significant portion of those losses came not from strangers, but from people who sounded like family. Margaret wanted to share her story, not for sympathy. She is very clear about that. She wanted to share it because she knows there are other people sitting in quiet houses, with quiet lives, waiting for a phone to ring. People who have built something carefully and slowly and alone, and who are, right now, in the early weeks of what feels like reconnection. She wanted them to hear this before the amounts get larger, before the withdrawals begin, before the blue notebook sits face down on the table. If you think this could never happen to you, this is exactly how it begins. Not with a suspicious stranger, not with a clumsy story, with someone who sounds like someone you love, with a call on a Tuesday, with a voice that knows how to say your name. There are specific things you can do right now. First, create a family code word, a simple word or phrase that only your real family members know, which you agree to use whenever someone contacts you in an emergency. If they cannot produce the word, the call ends. Second, any request for money from a family member, no matter how urgent, no matter how real it sounds, should be verified by calling back on a number you already have, not a number they give you. Third, before any transfer over $500 to a family member in distress, speak to one other person you trust. Just one. Say it out loud. Listen to how it sounds. Fourth, a retirement account is not emergency savings. It is not an investment vehicle for someone else's business. It exists for one person, you. If someone is asking you to use it for them, even someone you love, especially someone you love, that conversation deserves slowing down. It deserves a third party. It deserves time. Margaret is 63 years old. She works 4 days a week. She will work until she is 69, at least. She is okay. She says this clearly. She is okay. She has her real son in her life now, more than before. She has Linda and Carol. She has the house, which is paid off. She will be okay. But she wanted you to know, so that you do not have to be as strong as she was forced to be. There is a moment she comes back to. Not the last transfer. Not the day she drove to Phoenix. Not the disconnected number. It is a small moment early on. She is sitting at her kitchen table in the evening, and the phone rings, and it is him, the voice, and she picks up and says his name, her son's name, and the voice says, "Hey, Mom." And she felt, in that moment, a kind of warmth she had not felt in a long time. Real warmth. True warmth. The kind that comes from being known. She did not manufacture that feeling. It was not a mistake. It was not foolishness. It was love responding to what sounded like love. That is what she most wants people to understand. The feeling was real. Her part of it was real. She is not ashamed of having loved. She is careful now about where that love goes. She didn't lose her savings to a stranger. She lost them to someone who knew exactly how a mother answers the phone.